New York City is in the throes of a crisis. The bustling metropolis, known for its resilience and diversity, is now facing a humanitarian challenge that is testing its limits. Migrant families, seeking shelter and a better life, are being evicted from the very shelters meant to protect them. These families, often fleeing violence and poverty, arrive with hopes of finding safety and stability. The city, struggling to cope with the influx, has implemented a controversial policy. Officials argue that the sheer number of new arrivals has overwhelmed the system, necessitating drastic measures. Families, some who have only recently arrived, are being given 60 days to leave. The clock is ticking and the pressure is mounting. Many of these families have nowhere else to go, and the uncertainty is palpable. The images are stark, bewildered families clutching meager possessions, standing on sidewalks, unsure of where to turn. Their faces tell a story of desperation and fear as they grapple with an uncertain future. The evictions are a stark reminder of the challenges facing both the city and the desperate families seeking refuge within its borders. The city's infrastructure is straining under the weight of this crisis, and the human cost is evident. The situation is complex with no easy answers. City officials are caught between the need to manage limited resources and the moral imperative to provide for those in need. The city claims the evictions are necessary. They argue that without these measures, the system would collapse entirely, leaving even more people without any support. Shelter space is at a premium. The shelters are overcrowded, and the conditions are far from ideal. Families are crammed into small spaces, with little privacy or comfort. The influx has stretched resources thin. Food, medical care and basic necessities are in short supply, and the staff is overwhelmed by the sheer volume of need. But advocates argue that the policy is inhumane. They believe that the city should find alternative solutions that do not involve displacing vulnerable families. It pushes vulnerable families further into uncertainty and hardship. As night falls, many of these families find themselves on the streets, exposed to the elements and the dangers of the city. The crisis continues to unfold with no clear resolution in sight. The evictions have ignited a firestorm of debate, sparking intense emotions and drawing battle lines across the city. On one side, Mayor Adams and his administration defend the policy, standing firm in their belief that tough decisions are necessary for the greater good. They argue that it's about fairness, about prioritizing those who have been in the system the longest, ensuring that resources are allocated to those who have waited patiently. They say their hands are tied, that the city is stretched beyond its limits, with resources dwindling and the demand for services skyrocketing. But advocates for the migrants are crying foul, accusing the administration of neglecting the very people who need help the most. They accuse the city of turning its back on the most vulnerable, those who have nowhere else to turn and no one else to rely on. They point to the lack of affordable housing, the scarcity of jobs, and the systemic barriers that make it nearly impossible for these individuals to rebuild their lives. The near impossible task of rebuilding a life with so little support in a city that seems to have forgotten them. They say the city is failing in its moral obligation, neglecting its duty to protect and uplift all its residents, regardless of their background or circumstances. The debate is heated, often acrimonious, with both sides entrenched in their positions and unwilling to compromise. Protests erupt on the steps of City Hall, with passionate voices demanding change and justice for those affected by the evictions. Politicians trade barbs on cable news, each side presenting their arguments and counter-arguments, further polarizing the public. Lost in the noise are the human stories, the faces behind the statistics, the real people whose lives are being upended by these policies. Amidst the chaos, community organizations and volunteers step in, providing much-needed support and relief to those in dire straits. Despite the division, there are moments of unity and compassion as ordinary citizens come together to help their neighbors in need. The city remains divided, but the hope for a better future persists, driven by the resilience and determination of its people. Maria, a young mother from Venezuela, sits on a cot in a crowded shelter, her eyes filled with fear. The room is packed with other families, each with their own stories of hardship and hope. The air is thick with uncertainty and the quiet murmur of worried conversations. Her two young children huddle close, sensing their mother's distress. They cling to her, their small hands gripping her clothes, seeking comfort in her presence. The children, too young to fully understand, feel the weight of their mother's anxiety. They arrived in New York just 3 months ago, fleeing violence and poverty in their homeland. The journey was long and arduous, filled with moments of fear and uncertainty. They left behind everything they knew, hoping to find safety and a chance at a better life. Maria clutches the eviction notice in her hand, the words blurring through her tears. 60 days. The notice is a stark reminder of the precariousness of their situation. Each day that passes brings them closer to an uncertain future. 60 days to find a place to live, a job, a future. The clock is ticking and the pressure is mounting. Maria spends her days searching for housing, navigating a complex and competitive market, and her nights worrying about what will happen if she can't find a solution. 60 days to defy the odds in a city known for its exorbitant rents and cutthroat job market. The challenges are immense and the resources are scarce. Maria knows that finding stable housing and employment is crucial for her family's survival. "Where will we go?" she whispers, her voice choked with emotion. The question hangs in the air, unanswered. The uncertainty is overwhelming, and the fear of the unknown is a constant companion. Maria's story is not unique. It is one of many, a single thread in a vast tapestry of human struggle and resilience. Each family in the shelter has a story, each one a testament to the strength and determination of those who seek a better life. It echoes across the shelters of New York City, a testament to the human cost of this crisis. The shelters are filled with families like Maria's, each facing their own battles, each hoping for a brighter future. The human impact of the migrant crisis is profound, and the need for compassion and support is greater than ever. The eviction policy's impact on children is particularly devastating. The uncertainty and upheaval of constant moves take a heavy toll. Imagine being a child, ripped from your home, thrust into a strange new world, only to be uprooted again and again. The trauma manifests in different ways. Some children become withdrawn, their silence speaking volumes. Others act out, their anger a reflection of their fear. Many struggle in school, their minds too preoccupied with survival to focus on learning. The emotional scars may not be visible, but they run deep. These children, already carrying the weight of displacement, are being robbed of their childhoods, their futures shrouded in uncertainty. Section 5. The city's defense. A necessary evil. The city argues that its hands are tied. The migrant influx, they say, is unprecedented. The shelter system, already strained, is buckling under the pressure. The evictions, they insist, are not about cruelty, but about pragmatism. They point to the finite resources, the legal obligations to provide shelter to all who need it. They say that difficult choices must be made, that the alternative is a complete collapse of the system. They plead for understanding, for federal assistance, but critics counter that the city's response lacks compassion, that it prioritizes expediency over humanity. They argue that the evictions are short-sighted, that they will ultimately cost more by pushing families into deeper poverty and homelessness. Section 6. A city on the brink, challenges beyond shelter. The eviction crisis lays bare a deeper truth. New York City is grappling with a confluence of crises. The lack of affordable housing is nothing new, but the migrant influx has pushed the system to a breaking point. Finding affordable housing in New York City is akin to finding a needle in a haystack. The competition is fierce, the rents astronomical. Many working families struggle to keep a roof over their heads. For newly arrived migrants, the odds are stacked even higher. And the challenges extend beyond housing. Language barriers, lack of job opportunities, and limited access to healthcare compound the difficulties. The evictions are not just about shelter, they are about survival. Section 7. A call for action. Is anyone listening? The situation in New York City is a microcosm of a national crisis. Cities across the country are struggling to cope with an influx of migrants. The federal government, meanwhile, seems content to sit on the sidelines. Advocates are calling for a coordinated federal response. They demand increased funding for shelters, affordable housing and support services. They urge the government to address the root causes of migration, the poverty and violence that drive people from their homes. The time for inaction is over. The crisis in New York City is a stark reminder that we are all interconnected. What happens in one city, in one shelter, resonates far beyond. Section 8, a shared humanity finding common ground. The migrant eviction crisis is complex, fraught with emotion and political posturing, but at its core it's about human beings. Families fleeing desperate circumstances, seeking safety, opportunity, a future. The debate is important, but it's essential not to lose sight of the human cost. Behind the statistics, the policy debates are real people with real lives. They deserve our compassion, our understanding, our help. Finding a solution will require empathy, collaboration, and a willingness to see beyond political divides. It's time for New York City and the nation to live up to its ideals and offer a helping hand to those most in need.